Welcome to Reading Between Deadlines, a podcast with two authors who read books with the same crazed enthusiasm as we write them. Rachel Johns is a Diet Coke addicted best-selling author writing rom-com, rural romance and women's fiction. And Anthea Hodson is a coffee-addicted victim of menopause who writes historical fiction and won't shut up about it. Together, we run the Rachel Johns Book Club and travel the country, reading, writing, talking and drinking wine, because we're a bit classy. Join us as we delve into some worldwide bestsellers to see what makes them tick and to see if we love them as much as we love writing. The end. Hello and welcome to Reading Between Deadlines. We are here of authors and we love reading so much that we get together a couple of times a month to talk about best-selling novels to see how we feel about them. My name is Anthea Hodson. I'm an author of historical fiction and my great friend is...
I'm Rachel Jones. I'm an author of lots of different types of fiction.
There's a genre, Rachel's written it, I have to say, and she's
Fantasy and not dragons.
well, you've recently background into crime, so I feel like there's a dragon on the horizon somewhere. Maybe wielding a gun or a computer or something, but I feel like we've got dragons in our future.
Anyway, thank you for listening to us. And I want to shout out to Alexandra Armand. I'm just going off script already, Anthea.
Yeah.
Get used to me by now.
I love going off script. Go for it.
Alexandra Armand, I should say, has left us a review. I love people who leave us a review.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Alexandra.
Alexandra has given us a 5-star review, and Alexandra is actually an author too. Her book is out this month or last month called Thoroughly Disenchanted. She's given us a review, 5 stars. As authors, we adore 5 stars, don't we, Andrea?
Yes, we do. That makes me feel better.
And this podcast is too. Anyway, Alexandra has said, such a great listen, and I love your different perspectives. So that's really nice. And we've been getting some really good feedback and comments on our Substack as well. So if you're on Substack, you can follow us at Reading Between Deadlines and you get a little bit more info apart from just the pod. And if you're not on Substack, I think you can just sign up to it. And look, you don't have to sign up to Substack. You can do the email thing. Anyway, you can find us. But thank you to the people so far who commented on our posts and let us know that you're listening. Let us know your opinions of the books too. I'm feeling quite happy, Anthea, because a lot of people seem to have very similar opinions to us.
It is interesting, isn't it? Because the books that we're doing are such popular books, best-selling novels. And so it is interesting because sometimes I think, gosh, am I the only one when it comes to not enjoying a book or whatever? And so when you see other people, you go, oh, it's not just me then. Because I think quite often they kind of break up in hype for books. And so it is interesting to have a look at a really successful book and say, how do I actually feel about this?
Yeah, exactly. And it makes me feel like that I'm not completely crazy. Well, just a little bit, you know.
Well, crazy as you need to be an author, right?
You need a bit. So today, I hope you can see it for those who are watching, but yours isn't that less blurry than mine for some reason. We are talking about The Life Cycle of the Common Octopus by debut author Emma Knight. Now, I'm just going to read the blurb to you all. Hopefully some of you have read it now because we've been promoting that we are going to do it. And if not, you don't like spoilers, switch now. Go find yourself a copy of the book and then come back and listen to it. If you don't mind spoilers like me, then keep listening. Welcome to the party. Okay, so the blurb of The Life Cycle of the Common Octopus is: Pen and Alice, childhood friends from Toronto, are in their first year at University of Edinburgh. Each has come to the city for her own reasons. Pen knows her divorced parents back in Canada are hiding something from her. She believes she'll find the answer here in Scotland, where an old friend of her father's, now a famous writer known as Lord Lennox, lives. When she's invited to spend the weekend at Lennox's century-old estate, it's actually a castle. I'm sure it's a castle, it says. With enveloping, fascinating family, Pen begins to unravel her parents' secret, just as she's falling in love for the first time. Well, who wouldn't fall in love in a Scottish castle? I mean, seriously. Meanwhile,
yes, I would. That's not a no, I would.
Meanwhile, Alice, an aspiring actor, sees university as her route to the West End and beyond. The star of this year's theatre production, she's making the most of the power she wields as an object of desire until an affair with her tutor begins to slip from her control. So, why we chose this book? Well, I think I'd seen it chosen. So I follow on Instagram Jenna Bushhager, I think her name is. Have you heard of her?
No. I found it by you. So however you found it is how I found it.
Well, if she was Australian, you would have heard of her because she is in the news industry. She presenter on the Today Show in America. Anyway, but she also runs a book club called Read with Jenna. That's why I follow her, not for the news. Anyway, I saw that she'd chosen this book and I mentioned it to you, I think when we were in a shop or somewhere, and I was like, oh, I've heard this is pretty good. You picked it up, read the blurb and thought, sounds like something I'd like to read. And so
And do you know why? Do you know why, Rachel?
Why? No, I don't.
It was the mention,
An octopus fetish?
not the octopus. The title would not have made me pick up this, not much as I like octopuses, they're delicious, but it wouldn't have made me pick this up. What made me excited was the phrase centuries-old estate. And so if you've got young woman, old house, I'm in. Tick, tick, tick.
Yeah. What's it called? I mean, it's your jam, I would say, just like, yeah. Anyway, yeah, I admit those things sound appealing to me too. And the life cycle of the common octopus is an intriguing title in that it's a unique title, but would it have made me pick it up? Probably not either. But I saw that Jenna had chosen it. I also saw that it was a New York Times bestseller in its first week.
Mhm.
It's probably helped along, let's face it, by Jenna choosing it as whatever. Because she's a bit like Oprah and Reese, in terms of the book world in America, from what I get. Maybe not quite as high, but she's there. So Jenna, if you're listening, maybe you are as high, as big. Anyway, also it was a Barnes and Noble book club pick. So, all those things do help.
I can see it would be a good book club pick too.
Well, that's good because we're going to get into discuss it. But first, do you want to tell us about Emma?
The 2 books ago, you quite rightly said you only need a 2-line or a 2-sentence.
I noticed with Sally Rooney, didn't I?
Sally Rooney, she's not mucking around. She doesn't bother over-explaining herself. And the bio that I have here, I feel is a little similar.
I'll say something first.
Go.
The bio is not actually in the book I have.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's taking the cake, right?
I mean, that's pretty, yeah.
In not having a bio at all, I mean, I think maybe it was a publishing oversight.
I think, yeah, that's
we're seeing a trend here. I can understand that maybe we shouldn't just shorten our bios next book. Maybe we should just completely remove them.
Well, maybe. Well, this one, I think it's covering a couple of bases, and I don't know what I've covered.
But you found it online.
I don't know if it's the best bio I've ever
seen. She has a website either. Did some Googling research.
Oh. Maybe she's just too classy to me.
She's like a recluse, a hermit. Anyway.
I love a hermit. That's my life goal.
Oh, no, you slowed up. No, we'll chat.
Keep on live shadowing at social occasions.
Oh, we're going to talk about the light shadowing. Someone light shadowed in this book.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, anyway.
This book refers to, do they call it the Irish goodbye in this book? I'm sure they refer to it white shadowing.
Maybe that's when I said it. Anyway, go. Let's find out.
So, Emma Knight, which is an awesome name, by the way, is co-founder and head of brand at Greenhouse, an award-winning Canadian organic beverage company. Would I mention that in my writing bio?
Probably not. That's what I thought.
It's a bit interesting. Emma is a co-author of the Greenhouse Cookbook, a national bestseller.
I think Greenhouse is really big in America and we don't know it.
But it's a cookbook, so I don't think I would have mentioned it because...
No, I should say. Well, don't come at me, Canadians.
Oh, you don't want to anger a Canadian. They'll call the Mounties on you. Her work has appeared in a number of Canadian and international publications. Emma lives in Toronto with her husband and 2 daughters. So really, I mean, it is a debut novel. It's a very minimal bio, I've got to say, particularly in terms of fiction writing. That said, the writing's bloody excellent.
You know what? It just gave me a clue. Your rating. Anyway,
I enjoyed it, Rach.
I know.
I'm a woman of mystery.
I was just thinking, I wonder if people other literary authors who are held in high esteem, we've talked about Sally Rooney. I wonder if people like Anne Patchett and that have a short bio too.
Oh, yeah.
I'm thinking that maybe there's something in that, whereas commercial fiction authors, genre fiction authors, we say what our favourite TV genre is and that we drink Diet Coke and like earrings. We're just a little bit...
Puppy dogs and stuff, yeah.
No, we're seeing different. Anyway, do you want to...
In my case, that's kind of all I've got to go on is my appreciation of...
I've worked for an important beverage company and written for important magazines either. I did once write very yeah, true. Perth Bible magazine. Anyway, Anthea, do you want to quickly tell everyone, because we don't want to bore the people who have listened before, what our rating
I'm going to read it from the Riot Act. These are the rules, people. So Rach and I constantly talk about all manner of fascinating things during our working week. Quite often it's about novels. We've made the rule we cannot discuss podcast novels together in case we start to align our positions with that incidentally. So we haven't discussed this book together at all. We will go 3, 2, 1, and we will both give it a rating. The ratings are very broad. Kiss, kill, marry. So Kiss, I enjoyed. Kill, I barely finished this bloody thing. And marry, I loved, enjoyed, would recommend, would probably keep it on my shelf. So they're the 3 ratings. That's the rules. Is that the rules?
I think so. So who's going to count then?
We'll do the countdown because I was a bit late last time. So this time,
I think I've
very prompt. You ready?
Okay, go.
3, 2, 1, marry.
We're both going to get married. Anthea, since you're doing our editing, you need to get fancy now and find some "Here Comes the Bride" music when that
would be a change, man. Do my level best. If it cuts to silence for about half an hour, it's just me trying to work out how to put, a veil on us both or something. I don't know, but really enjoyed this.
I really enjoyed it too. At one stage, I was thinking, maybe it'll be a kiss. Like I liked it.
I was kissing the whole way through.
Really?
Change to marry. Where did you change to marry?
Oh, no, you tell me first because I'm still having to think about that.
Now, so I was,
that's a good point, I don't think.
The whole way through, I was kissing this book. The writing's great. It's young woman, old house. 2 things for me. The first was Pen, the main character, is trying to trace back what happened in her parents' marriage and why that hasn't worked out. And we'll discuss that in a minute. But my fear was 9 times out of 10, when an author sets up a novel and says, family history and secrets will be revealed and blah, blah, and the young lady is going to discover something that changes everything. 9 times out of 10, that does not pay off and it's massively disappointing. And I just go, yeah, big whoop, that didn't change anything. Look, it changed everything and paid off.
Where's that fiction?
I was at a certain point.
Yeah, but not before.
Not the whole way through.
Yeah.
So I love that. And the other thing that made me go on marrying this book is the octopus part, funnily enough, because the whole way through, the octopus didn't pay off. And then the octopus paid off at the end. And I felt, this deep, and I'm sure as mothers we all do, this level of emotional reaction and relating to that and the fear of that and the acknowledgement of that. And perhaps if we're octopuses later. But I related to that. And there was another part with her baby right at the end, and I deeply related to that. And I thought that is exactly how I felt.
That Pen's baby?
Yeah, when she says, I was your home for a while.
I liked that.
Deeply related to that. And so that was my marriage. Yeah.
I agree. I went back. So for those people who maybe we'll do a little quick thing.
Yeah, we should go back through. But what was your marry point before G?
I just also want to say that the beginning and end of, when I read the first bit of the book says now, and it's a mother and the nameless mother talking to her newborn baby, right? I read that, kept going.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really think much about that at the beginning, and I found it poignant when I read it and related to it. But then when I got to now at the end, and it came back again, and we have that closing off of that scene where she's looking up at the baby.
Yeah.
Ding ding tingles even just saying it. Yeah, I was like, is that Pen's baby? And then I went back at it, and I worked out it definitely is. But I thought it was very well rounded, very well bookended. Marry for me, I think it's more of a gradual thing.
Yeah.
It just seemed to, at the beginning, I was a little bit, not bored, but I found the beginning a little bit slow maybe in terms of when we're all setting up who the friends are and all that kind of stuff. And then the further I got in and the further I got into the relationships, and I wrote this somewhere, I think, about the characters. I wrote on one stage, we should go back in a second and explain, but I wrote something about Fergus. I think I loved Fergus, but he was real and he was flawed. Like he was real sweet. He said some really funny things. I've got chapter 184. Let's skip this one, Fergus said, taking Pen's hand. They're at a dance. I'm all for threesome or foursome, but 8's too many bodies to keep track of. And I just liked his humour and his different things. He seemed like a bit of a larrikin, as we would say. Yeah. But he seemed to have a good heart. Towards the end, he's a little bit horrible to how he treats Pen. But I thought, and then he comes around, he asks he sees, and it just felt like they're really real characters.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It felt real because you could feel his embarrassment at having been like they had that sexual encounter, and then it was obviously not a thing, and then he obviously felt awkward about it, and then he
And
did
he's only a young guy.
but
College students, right?
yeah, exactly. It felt real. Like all of those college student interactions really felt real, and like student town and student interaction, and everyone's a bit broken. We're trying to get drunk cheaply and all that sort of stuff. It was
All the different people. I love one way it says, and this is when I actually wrote here, and we will promise you guys we'll get to reviews thing about a blurb, the description in a moment. But I wrote one comment. Why the era? Like, why did they choose
I noticed that too.
early 2000s? It says here, the mating rituals of university students in the first decade of the 21st century were embarrassing. I'm guessing probably the mating rituals of the students at any decade in history are embarrassing. But why?
Mating rituals are still embarrassing.
True. Mating rituals are just embarrassing, full stop.
Full stop.
I was about to say unless you're in the moment, but even if you're in the moment. Anyway, why did she choose that era? Hang on, before we answer that question, should we do our
We should actually talk about what goes.
recap, or do you want me to?
You start the recap and I'll
try. So the book, as the blurb says, is about Pen and Alice, mostly Pen, I think. Like I would say Pen's the main character. They're two childhood besties from Canada, and they decided both to go to the University of Edinburgh. I do admit I found that a little bit weird, but the thing is I loved the book so much I could get past the things that I found a little bit weird, probably. And I did find it a little bit weird that they were both deciding to go to the same place, but they didn't want to be kind of together. I mean, I understood it. I can't even explain what I'm saying, but that felt a little bit convenient to me, probably the word.
You know, even as you say that though, my daughter has just decided to go to Melbourne Uni because one of her friends is going.
But is she going to then pretend like I relate to that? But it was like, oh, and my son might be there too, hey. Like, would you then, because they were like, oh, but we're going to have our separate lives and we're not going to interfere. But then we basically didn't. So that was a bit, just that little bit. If they just said, let's go. And
I can't imagine them doing that, going, we don't want to be too reliant on each other. And then they end up gravitating together. And
anyway, that was just a little tiny thing. So Pen and Alice go. The reason Pen wants to go is because she's fascinated with a famous author in Edinburgh who used to be friends with her dad, and his name is Elliot Lennox. Now, Pen's middle name is Elliot, which is not a common name for a woman. She's kind of intrigued about why that is. Yeah. She also feels like there's something in Edinburgh that will give her the answers, that maybe this Elliot Lennox guy will have the answers to why her parents split up when she was in her childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
I was a bit, at that stage, I was a bit sus about that because I'm like, just speak to your parents. You don't have to go to university and meet this other guy.
The same too. Maybe she tried to talk to them. But I don't think she necessarily had tried to talk to them.
Yeah, no, it doesn't sound like a very communicative family. So yeah, that was my only. Oh, we're really trying to solve a family mystery by this guy.
Parents, when she up and decided to go to Edinburgh, would have been a bit suspicious about her reasons.
Would have still kind of filled her in at that point, really.
I would have thought, like, you know, she could have gone with Alice to Edinburgh, right? If Alice wanted to go, that would have been believable to her parents, maybe. Is Edinburgh University? Look, I have no idea. Is it really the place you go for drama? I don't know. I've never.
Well, I mean, Edinburgh Festival happening.
Yeah, true. Maybe. Anyway,
that's an international thing. So
another side. No, anyway. So then she goes and she gets involved. Like, she meets this group of friends over there. There's Joe and Fergus, who are a brother and sister. Are they twins? I don't know. So Joe becomes their really good, like, girlfriend. Fergus, like, all with around hanging out with them. They've also got their friend, was it Hugh or Hugo? And Charlie. Anyway, there's a bunch of young people who all go to the same university, do similar kind of courses, and they all live, obviously, in the residential college. And so Pen emails Elliot Lennox, a famous author, and sort of invites herself to stay with his family. He says, yes, come along. His wife's very welcoming too. She meets his gorgeous older son and his friend. She immediately has this attraction to the older son, but isn't sure whether he feels anything back. The younger son is missing in action.
Yeah. Cousin's there, George.
Oh, cousin George is there. She stays a lot with there because her mum, Margot, was this famous fashion designer, and this is where the whole octopus thing comes in later, we'll talk about, but wasn't really a very involved mother, and she often left George with her aunt and uncle. And so George now has a young baby of her own. Pre to stay, but she goes to stay with her auntie. So they're all there. They all get to know each other. Everyone seems to get on really well. And then back at New College, Alice, she's having a fling affair with a married professor.
Yeah.
That's a bit icky. And she's also trying out and rehearsing for important theatre production.
Yeah. She ends up in a play called Arcadia.
That's right. And there's a lovely guy, Neville, who is there as well, doing the play, practicing stuff. Anyway, then Sasha, who's the oldest son of Elliot, he starts messaging Pen, and she's all happy because, he may be interested in me and stuff. He invites her back to stay. The day he invites her back to stay, he doesn't even turn up until later in the day, leaves with his mum, and because he's blind, it sounds about a polo game, and she's like, why is he invited there?
Yeah.
He's done that for a while. Very hard book to explain.
Yeah.
A lot.
Where you are now, though, Rach, I think also plays into the reason that the timeline is as it is, because I think the communication now is so easy and young people would just always be texting or Instagramming or WhatsApping or whatever.
True, because their phones are very much just a portable phone.
Yeah, so she's logging online every now and again and seeing those messages. They don't seem to be endlessly messaging as much as people now. Yeah. Because I think she kind of need that little bit of distance for that to be a mystery as to why Sasha was behaving the way.
Yeah, that's true. See, as I've said before, Anthea, writing a contemporary story is hard.
Not as hard as historical, but okay.
Whatever. We'll have that one day. Anyway, so then basically it all unfolds that Pen's dad had a brief liaison before he was married, but he was engaged, having a year working in London while his they was still in Toronto. He had a brief liaison with Elliot's sister Margot, George's mum, and it turns out that he is George's dad, but he never had anything to do with her till she was in her early teens. His wife does know about her. I can't remember.
As in Pen's mum. Sorry.
Yeah, she did find out.
Yes, she did. Yes.
Find out. Around the time she found out was when they finally broke up, even though they'd never been hugely happy. This other thing I thought I really liked, like all of the characters, their backstories felt real, not convoluted, and they really gave good motivation for how they were. Like Pen's mum was brought up in a foster care family, deserted by her mum or whatever. So there's really big themes of motherhood and stuff. And she was trying to do her best, but all the decisions she's made have
she was desperate for a child and
had multiple losses.
And so that then compounds the pain of her fiance who came back and married her and did the righty, in inverted commas at that stage. She had then had trouble falling pregnant and keeping Pen and managing to get Pen, which put strain on that relationship anyway. But he had gone off and had an accidental baby.
Yeah.
And he had offered to Margot to leave his fiance
and she could want to, she's independent, doesn't believe in marriage.
We'll get to the octopus in a second. But Margot said no, she didn't want that life. And so that's why I found that so satisfying, because I feel like what's the mystery of my family could have been really, it's one conversation and who cares? But there's a reason for no one to be talking about it.
And
it's not taking
right. I agree. One thing I did find a little iffy at the beginning, and this is probably why I was a slow kiss then to a marry.
Yeah.
Why she went to Scotland.
Yeah, that was the bit that I was a bit.
Was she going to find out why she's called Elliot? Or was she says she's going because she thinks that these people will be able to give her some insight into her parents. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, she's got no reason to know that.
I was nervous about this plotline for that reason.
That's the only thing. I still don't think that really works. Like, I think the only reason I'm forgiving it, as I said, because everything else was next kiss. I love it.
And she did make it work. But that
why did she up and go? There could have been a better reason that she decides to go, or lo and behold, I hate saying, we have a contrivance, but maybe she went to Edinburgh because her friend was going, Alice, and then ended up remembering and deciding to meet him up,
look up Uncle Elliot,
or something like that. Or she runs into Sasha somewhere at a party and they find out, our dads used to be friends. I don't know. But I forgave that because the rest all seemed... And the conversations then that Pen has with her dad and her mum, and comes to terms with the fact that they all have their own life and her life doesn't need to be influenced, or she doesn't need to make this a big deal, basically.
Yeah, yeah. It was loved either way, and that they possibly wouldn't ever have been a partnership really, except they were determined to make it work for her and be happy. The octopus thing that came in at the end was satisfying because it made sense of that plot line, and it was
I've got
really
to.
fascinating.
Shall I read the quote about that?
Yeah, do.
Yeah. So Pen goes to the London Aquarium to meet Margot, who she's kind of put it together that Margot must be her dad's lover and that Margot's George's mum. And then we got this octopus part. She says she's quite selfish as a mother. She's been told by her brother and her sister-in-law that she's selfish as a mother because George could have had a dad and the dad could have had a relationship with George and stuff. But she made this decision because she wanted a career, basically, and she didn't think that she was going to be able to have that. And it's interesting, isn't it, that a woman can have a career as a mother, but not as a married mother. And I think maybe there's something kind of, I mean, we do both have careers, but you know what I mean? I can see that makes it harder. Where it
Absolutely. And that's what was so interesting because we had the example of Pen's parents and then the example of
Christina,
George. Yeah.
and they all are very different. You know,
And so really, in terms of the octopus thing, I think it was really good. And in terms, Rachel, of us having just seen Liz Gilbert this year, and she's very anti-octopus. And so it was really interesting to have that in mind as well. And because I think there's a scope of octopus, maybe one
spectrum of everything, right? Should we read the octopus thing so people know? Okay. So she's talking about, she said, it was necessary for me to be selfish, this is Margot, in order for both of us, George and me, to survive. But people don't understand that. There's little room for a mother's self-interest in the narrative. There is only the selfish monster and the octopus. And then she goes on. What do you know about the life cycle of a common octopus? Margot asked. What now? Pen thought nothing. So Margot tells her. After the female lays her clutch of eggs, she devotes herself entirely to cleaning and protecting them for months. She stops looking for food, unable to leave them even for a short time. She begins to waste away. It's as if she's used up all her life force hunting, outmaneuvering predators, finding a mate, arranging her den, and then finally caring for her eggs. By the time they hatch, she's starved herself to death, or nearly. Her skin, once capable of rapid changes in colour and texture, goes pale and develops lesions that never heal. Her eyes go cloudy. She begins to pick at herself. Her decomposing body sometimes becomes a source of food for her young. She smiled a sad, thin-lipped smile. That's the best she can do for them. What about the male? Pen asked. She thought she knew where this was going. He keeps mating? No, said Margot. It's worse for him. He isn't needed to care for the eggs the way she is. He usually dies before they hatch. Sometimes the mother of his children eats him. Anyway, and then she goes, I'm well aware that I'm not an octopus. I just find it useful to remember there's no reason for me to behave by one. It's really powerful lines about, like, I think often as women, but as mothers, we are a bit martyrdom sometimes.
And I think we can judge other women who aren't allowing their children to eat them alive. And so I did find that really interesting.
We judged. I feel like I possibly felt that judgment a little bit sometimes when, not by my own family, not by my friends, but when I have been like on tour or doing events for a couple of weeks away. And people have said to Craig, oh, he must be great looking after kids and all this sort of stuff. And she's away for a while. Yet when he worked away for 2 years and would only be coming home every 6 weeks.
Oh, was giving you a brass band, right?
Oh, I mean, they did comment, oh, it must be hard you're married to it. But no one thought, oh, he's a father and he's left his children. There is just different expectations. And I suppose you're similar. I mean,
I'm very similar because my husband is away a lot of the time with his work. And yeah, I don't think anyone's ever gone, good on your Hods, doing a good job. No one's on fire.
Great for you for leaving your career.
Oh, no.
Whereas if
Totally.
he had left his career so that you could continue your radio career.
Well, we'd all die of starvation for starters. But yes, absolutely. And having seen Liz Gilbert as well, like I really, really heard that. And I think there's generations of women who've been octopuses. And
I think people are saying not to have kids because of it. The generation.
I noticed that stat, which is
Aren't they?
single women without children live longer and are happier than married women with children.
Yeah. There was one more little bit at the end that I didn't just read then, which I thought was good. The mother who insists on keeping that inner self of hers alive is monstrous. No one, and father continues devoting himself to whatever it is he most wants to accomplish in this world. This is what I'm saying. But a wife and mother who has priorities of her own and refuses to put them last, hers becomes a life of conflict between who she is and what is expected of her. Society deems her selfish and unnatural. If she lets herself believe it, she's doomed, and so are her children. This is what I want to ask you, because Pen says, I don't think you're right. So Margot's late 40s, maybe, early 50s. Pen is late teens, early 20s.
Yeah.
And she says, I don't think you're right. Maybe that used to be the case, but no one thinks it's selfish or unnatural anymore. Things have changed. Margot says it would be lovely if that were true. Now, I wrote a little message note here that said, do we agree? But I think we've just said, not in our generation, maybe, but I feel like possibly the generation after us, which I guess Pen.
I think the next generation are a bit.
Pen's not really. She's about the same age as me, actually, when I think about it, because I was in my early 20s and the early.
Actually, yeah, probably, yeah.
So I don't think so, but I think, say, the age of our kids, like I feel like, say, your daughter, I feel like she might make the decision not to get married because she's not.
She was literally saying to me the other day, she's 16, she's saying, oh, I don't know if I'd bother getting married and having kids. And I said, oh, I'd like to think that you might one day. But then I said, but stats show that you'll live for a shorter time and you'll be more unhappy. And I said, but that said,
wait, and you as a mother are saying, yeah, and be unhappy.
That's it. Yeah, saddle up for a life. But I did say, though, as the generations go through, and I say this with hope in my heart, that definitely partners and husbands will take on more and more. And I don't think it will be, I don't think it's going to be 50%, frankly, but
fine.
If we can,
it's getting, I think there will be a closing of
because
I feel like when, like, say, my son's age,
yeah,
I think they see that they need to do a bit more or they're not going to be like, and I think that women are not going to put up with less.
Yeah. And that's what
I think previous generations did. We've been talking for almost over half an hour, so we should probably start wrapping up. But is there anything else that you think?
I'm going to tell you a boring story because I'm old.
And now I talk about the White Shadow. But go.
Okay, my boring story first. Loved the whole book. Obviously, I've just married it. Love Young Woman, Old House. Loved all that. Love a touch of romance. Love all that. And the romance felt really real because he was not ideal, like pimples and stuff, and it felt real.
I loved it. It was a beautiful romance.
I thought it was gorgeous. But that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about young people having adventures and being in a university town. And this, right at the end, I went, oh, that is Arcadia by Tom Stoppard. And I'm telling you why I remember that. Because when I was a young woman having an adventure living in a university town in Oxford in 1994, I knew a young mathematician. This is not the guy I dated. It's another guy called Alvin Hazard. And he was doing pure maths. And he and his supervisor at Oxford helped playwright Tom Stoppard with the chaos theory that in the play Arcadia. And so every time I hear about Arcadia or I see that, I look for his name there because he would be in 1993 or so, he did it, but I met him in 94. And we used to hang out in the pub and he helped Tom Stoppard write Arcadia, which turned up in this book.
That is a very interesting and fun connection to it. I would say my fun connection is I've decided I am always going to marry a book that has Diet Coke in it. Not just joking.
No, Diet Coke in mine.
Yeah, well, I'll always marry your books anyway. There was Diet Coke in this book, so that could have tick of approve. The other thing which really made me laugh, so some people who know us will have heard that Anthea has a habit or a reputation. She's getting it in more and more. Oh, right.
I think people would be disappointed now if I didn't white shadow them.
Yes, where is it? I wrote, I know, I put it on here.
It was in this book.
It was over 95. So Anthea leaves a party without telling anyone she's got a dinner or whatever, without telling anyone she's going. So she's like every time, and I'm used to it now, but, Anyway.
That's the thing I look forward to. When I show up at a thing, I look forward to sneaking out in the near future.
And people are like, where's Anthea? And I'm like, oh, she's white shadowed then. So white shadow, Anthea told me that white shadow means, will you explain, Anthea?
Well, White Shadow, when my kids were young, there was a cartoon called, I think, Turbo, and it's about snails. And one snail, at one point, he's pretending he's some fabulous superhero or something. And he says white shadow, and he just blends into the background. And so that for my family just became you disappearing from the room, blending into the background. And so we call it white shadowing when you leave somewhere unannounced, and because then you've got to say goodbye to everyone. It takes you an extra hour to get out of the room. So I just go, oh, my mind's at the time I'm off to the toilet, goodbye. And we call that white shadowing.
I was going to put it in my book one day, peoples. And I thought, Google what white shadow means, just in case I put it in print.
You're wearing tone here, Johns.
It's okay. I'm not the one that does it.
What do I have to say?
And it said that white shadow means ejaculating on someone's face while they're asleep. Anyway.
I'm editing this out.
So, right. So, Joe, white shadows. Like Anthony. It says Joe, whose voice might have carried more weight with this set, had slipped away from the reeling ball without saying proper goodbye, as had become her standard practice. And I wrote, shadowing. Then I wrote, what's going on with Joe? Now, we turned out later that Joe is having a lesbian romance with someone called Sylvia. Now, I have two questions for you. I know we said we're going to wrap up, but I just realized
I got the second question.
I wanted to talk about. So we have Alice, who's a sort of a main character, and we have her point of view, right? But I feel like it's Penn's story.
Yes, it is.
Did we need Alice's point of view and her little affair with the oh, someone's waving at your door. I thought they were waving in mine. Anyway, did we know you and her little thing with the affair? I guess it showed because Penn in the end is the one who gets the tutor fired and put out. So it shows her sort of standing up for a friend. And the novel is about friendship as well as motherhood and all that.
You make a good point because you could get rid of Alice and I don't know that it would affect anything.
The only thing I think that we need Alice for, well, she was a good friend. Did we need her point of view? But I wrote here, because the funniest scene in the book, or one of the funniest, is when Alice has lice. And Penn...
Oh, that was awesome.
So she's like, and no one else in the city of Edinburgh, maybe no one else in the world could be trusted with knowing how vile she was. Luna have shaved her head and called it a fashion statement, then asked Joe or Neville, whom she had known for a mere 6 months, to comb dirt from her hair. And it goes on. And it was hilarious and funny, and I loved that scene between them, which really showed their friendship.
Yeah, that was sweet. Yeah, I really enjoyed that too. You're right.
They've had that in dialogue, her calling Penn and saying, in my hair. Did we actually need her point of view? I don't know.
I don't actually know that we did, because now that you say that, it wasn't really so much a story about their friendship as much as I probably thought it was going in, actually.
Much more motherhood and family.
Interesting. Because, yeah, Alice played almost no part in that main plot line at all. It would be very liked her.
I didn't bother it. I liked her. Did we need the bit about the tutor having an affair with students? Like, we've had so many books about tutors having an affair with students, and it didn't feel like it was adding anything to that sort of dialogue. And the other thing, did we need Joe to have a lesbian affair, a lesbian lover? But that felt like I'm putting it in there because I need to tick some diversity.
Oh. See, I didn't even think of it like that. But yeah, maybe.
She's got a love, and that was fine and beautiful, but I'm just wondering, what did that add to this?
Like, if I look at it holistically with both of those things that you've just brought up, I would say that the lice and the party friend who always outshines Penn does play into it in terms of Penn and how she sees herself and how she sees it in terms of the world and Sasha and all that. So that probably plays into it. And also Joe's probably...
Do we need Alice's actual point of view?
No, probably not a point of view, but in terms of
young stuff.
Yeah, lots of young people meeting a variety of people.
Messiness of life that we all make. Yeah. But no, I absolutely loved it. Have you got anything else?
One last thing that I would add, it's just, it occurred to me before, but I'll sneak it in here. We're going way over here. It's
one thing too.
Christina's the mum.
Yeah. It's Sasha's mum.
Yeah, in The Castle by Fabulous. Christina, she's super, and this gets back to the octopus thing, because she's super smart, could do anything, ended up living and working in the castle. And then towards the end,
she has a genuine love story, right?
Exactly. And towards the end,
they do say, look, Christina works in the village and she makes all these people have got employment, and she does this and she does this, and she's thrown herself into the garden and into the community and into the family, all that. Quite octopusy, but she's loved her life and she's found it very satisfying. But right at the end, and I was personally disappointed because my dream is that she marries Sasha and they're Lord and Lady of the Manor and they
Christina.
I was annoyed because without saying or even asking the young people, they've made the decision that they're just going to hand off the castle.
So Sasha did say he didn't want it.
But there's more than just Sasha. And plus, no one's discussed it with Penn because I'd be going, oh, come. I think it undermined the idea that Christina had loved it so much, is probably my point. Because if she loved it that much, why was she not seeing value in it for her family?
And also,
maybe George would like it. Maybe, what was it, Freddie? Who was the other one, the kid running amok? Anyway, I just thought her saying, well, this is it, we're getting rid of it for the next generation.
That's a good point.
She didn't enjoy it herself.
I thought you were going to say that she said basically, although she thinks Sasha and Penn are great together and she's happy with their young love, and even though her first love has lasted, she almost hopes that Penn doesn't stay with her son. It says as one line, because she's like, she deserves to have all the adventures and that kind of stuff, which again goes against the whole thing is that Christina did live this life and she was happy with it, but maybe deep down because she doesn't want Penn to have it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I have one more thing to add. Promise everyone, just one more thing. It's like that, what's that old the steak knives, so?
Yeah, but wait, there's more.
There's more. Okay. So, there's a scene in this book where Penn is coming back on the train. It's after she's left the castle after Sasha has been a bit of a dick, not really talking to her.
Yes.
And she sits next to this guy on the train.
Yes, I remember this.
And he's a total jerk, total prick. That's probably nice.
Yeah.
He basically sexually harasses her.
Yes.
He calls her the C word at one stage. He basically, tries to get it on with her. When she's clearly tells him she's not interested, he starts being vicious towards her.
Yep.
Why do we need that scene? And then, look, as we said, I absolutely love this book, right? I'm marrying it. I prefer the US cover almost a little bit, which is totally different. And I'm like, I need that hardback cover maybe because you know how much I love hardback. So I 100% am, all in with this book. But I go, did we need that scene? We already had the professor who's vile and making untoward advances towards students. Why do we need the guy on the train to be a jerk? Is it because she was already feeling low? And I just don't like.
Maybe she was trying to add, maybe she was trying to add to that sense of hopelessness and isolation she's on her own dealing with.
It just felt like a scene that felt like yeah. What a great book, hey? If you haven't read it yet, we really recommend it. Well, yeah. Do you think it's a quiet novel? So for those who are,
because you would know better than I
would describe this as a quiet novel because
I really enjoy this, and I don't think I'm a quiet novel girl.
I think you sometimes think a quiet novel means a boring novel, and it's not. It's a deep character.
You do think that, actually.
I think the good quiet novels, though, novels like I only use quiet novel if I think the book looks good. Because to me, a quiet novel is something that packs a punch. It's really about the internal goings on in people's lives and stuff, not
very much so.
Crazy dramatics and stuff like that. Anyway, absolutely loved it. What are we reading next? So our next book is Barbara Trapido's Brother of the More Famous Jack. And Anthea, you'll be happy to know this is quite a short one. Yay! And we're also still reading The Blind Assassin in the read along with Natasha Lester that she's doing on her Substack, and we're going to have her as our very first guest to talk about a book that she loved, and we'll see if we loved it then too. Once again for listening to us.
Thank you very much. And I would advise you, please don't listen to her.
You'll only encourage us.
Bye.
See ya. Thanks for listening to Reading Between Deadlines. Be sure to join the Rachel Johns Book Club on Facebook and follow us on Substack and Instagram. There you can share your thoughts on the books we're reading and even make suggestions for which novel we should subject to our Kiss, Kill, Marry rating next. Until next time, happy reading.